Mr. Rakesh Junjunwala. You were quite close to him as well. What was your last interaction with him?
He was going to the inaugural flight of the airline that he launched, Akasa. He called me the night before and he said, Ramesh, I booked 2 seats for you and Ruchi, my wife. I want you to come. Unfortunately, we had a family wedding and that's it. I couldn't go in the flight with him. I think that was the last time I ever talked to him. I think maybe a few days after that, he had passed away.
$10,000 आपको दिए थे, कैसे लूज किया था? एग्जैक्टली गलती क्या की थी आपने वो फेज पे?
अमेरिका में बुल मार्केट चल रहा था and in that process I lost $10,000. Stock market 101 mistake थी. I was driving looking at the rear view mirror rather than the front view mirror. In the stock market always look what's coming ahead, not what happened behind.
You invested rupees 10 lakh in Infosys in 1993, but what was your thesis on that company?
Thesis बहुत simple थी. I tell you both these companies, Infosys, CMC. I used to work at the program I told you and my billing rate in America in the 1980s was $125 an hour. And here the billing rate was maybe $5-10 an hour. So there's a huge arbitrage opportunity. I realized that money would flow and work would flow to India.
What would your asset allocation strategy look like?
I have 3 diversifications. They're equity, equity and equity. I have nothing else.
Top 3 books that they should definitely read about investing.
A new book on Buffett which I particularly like by Alex Morris is called Unscripted Buffett and Munger.
What is one stock you had gifted your grandchildren when they were born? वीडियो देखने से पहले मेरी एक रिक्वेस्ट है आप सबसे। मैं YouTube एनालिटिक्स देख रहा था एंड वहां पर देखा कि 82.6% ऑफ माय ऑडियंस हु इज वाचिंग दिस कंटेंट हैज नॉट सब्सक्राइब टू द चैनल। अगर मैंने आपको थोड़ी सी वैल्यू प्रोवाइड की होगी एंड आपको अगर कंटेंट बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है, आई रिक्वेस्ट ऑल ऑफ यू टू प्लीज हिट द सब्सक्राइब बटन सो दैट वी कैन ब्रिंग यू द बेस्ट क्वालिटी ऑफ गेस्ट एंड गिव यू द मैक्सिमम वैल्यू पॉसिबल। थैंक यू सो मच फॉर सब्सक्राइबिंग टू आवर चैनल एंड एंजॉय दिस एंटायर एपिसोड ऑफ कॉन्वर्सेशन विद कुशल। सो आई रेड अबाउट यू अर्ली इन योर करियर. You lost $10,000 that were given to you by your father. And you also mentioned once that Bajaj Finance is something that you missed out on an opportunity. तो ये जब $10,000 आपको दिए थे, आपने वो कौन से स्टॉक्स में डाले थे अगर आपको याद होगे तो, और कैसे लूज किया था? क्या एग्जैक्टली गलती क्या की थी आपने वो फेज पे?
गलती तो बहुत इजी थी. इट्स अ वेरी हम्बलिंग एक्सपीरियंस. अमेरिका में बुल मार्केट चल रहा था and in that process I lost $10,000, which is very hard to do, but I managed to do it. जो मिस्टेक मैंने की थी बहुत स्टॉक मार्केट 101 मिस्टेक थी. आई वाज ड्राइविंग लुकिंग एट द रियर व्यू मिरर रादर देन द फ्रंट व्यू मिरर. इन द स्टॉक मार्केट ऑलवेज लुक व्हाट्स कमिंग अहेड, नॉट व्हाट हैपेंड बिहाइंड. तो मैंने क्या किया था, जो स्टॉक्स जो 1970s में चले थे, द इन्फ्लेशन स्टॉक्स, ऑयल, गोल्ड, प्रेशियस मेटल्स, मैंने वो खरीद लिए थे. क्यों खरीदे? क्योंकि ऑलरेडी 50% घट चुके हैं. Without realizing that they could go down another 50% of the price I bought it at, which is exactly what happened. So I happened to lose all the money because I bet on the past, not on the future. But वो कहते हैं ना कि it's a very cheap mistake to have made, because I never made that mistake again. But there's a larger point I'd like to make, Kushalji. I think I've repeated the story many times, but there's a larger lesson that is from this story. When I came to Dalal Street, I was very pleasantly surprised in the group of friends I have that information and ideas were exchanged very freely with each other, right? And I've always heard in Wall Street, for example, you would say that if you want a friend on Wall Street, go get a toaster or go get a dog, because no one's going to help you in Wall Street. But here I found that the people reached out, helped you, we shared information correctly. So one day, जो मेरे बहुत काबिल दोस्त हैं, उनसे पूछा मैंने कि ऐसे कैसे होता है कि वॉल स्ट्रीट में तो इतने सुकून है, कोई एक दूसरे बताता नहीं है, प्रोप्राइटरी सीक्रेट्स मांगते हैं. यहाँ you all share it so freely with each other, particularly if you're in that part of that group where you share ideas with each other. And he made a very important point to me. He said, Ramesh, there's a river flowing ahead of us. अगर तू 2 बाल्टी से उसमें निकाल दे या मैं 2 बाल्टी उसमें निकाल दूं, पानी कम नहीं होगा, पानी इतने का इतना होगा. So I realized that in the market is a good way to view the market. There's एक और अपॉर्चुनिटी अराउंड द कॉर्नर है. शायद वो मैंने मिस की, शायद उसमें पैसा भी लग गया, बट आई लर्नड माई लेसन एंड देयर इज ऑलवेज मोर अपॉर्चुनिटीज इन द मार्केट. Market is every day you wake up, there's another opportunity in the market to make money. So ultimately I realized that not to regret too much, but learn from my mistakes. That was more important.
मेरे डैड के साथ क्या हुआ था कि 1991-1992 में he was investing in stock markets and then all of a sudden he lost a lot of money in stocks. Okay,
Yeah.
from that day उनका mindset ऐसा हो गया है कि यार stock market में मुझे invest ही नहीं करना है because I have lost a lot of money already. After you losing that $10,000, आप फिर भी stock market में career आपने कैसे बनाया? आपको ऐसे thoughts नहीं आए कि अभी this is something which is not meant for me at all?
Not really. I mean, I realized it was a very humbling experience, as you saw, to lose $10,000 being a fresh MBA is not any time fun out there. But that motivated me to study more, to realize the mistakes I'd made. And जैसे मैंने आपको बताया था, जो गलती थी मैं जल्दी समझ गया, ये गलती की मैंने, गलती तो करते रहते हैं हम लोग शेयर बाजार में. The thing is not to repeat them too often, to make perhaps newer mistakes, but not older mistakes out there. So I think the ego got better of me, that I wanted to make back that money and then make a career in the stock market. So I think जो आदमी का ego है, that helped me in this matter.
So then आपने फिर वो मिस्टेक किया, आपने वो रियलाइज किया कि ये मिस्टेक हुई थी. At what point in your time you realized कि अभी स्टॉक मार्केट is something that I want to do it full time, and वो ट्रिगर पॉइंट कब आया था?
That is a bit more complicated. By 87, 88, I had stayed abroad for better part of a decade. And my father was very keen that I come back to India, being the only son and all these things. But उस time Hollywood छोड़ के दलाल सीट आना didn't seem like a very good idea to me. In fact, जो मैं पहले आया था, I was one of the first people who came back from America. नहीं तो हमेशा reverse migration चलता, people go from India to America. But इसका क्रेडिट मैं अपने पिताजी को दूंगा, बिकॉज उन्होंने मुझे समझाया था कि उनके पास वो शायद पेशेंस नहीं था, बट बोले अगर मेरे पास इतना पेशेंस है तो मैं शेयर खरीद के तिजोरी में बांध दूं और चाबी फेंक दूं. That time you'll remember the shares were physical, so you could do these things. And he was very bullish. He kind of understood from watching the flow of business that the market was changing, volumes were changing, and the opportunities were quite good in India. So he kind of gently persuaded me to come back to India. And as they say, the rest is history.
And what are some top 2 or 3 lessons that you've learned from your father and आप अभी भी आपके daily life में implement करते हो?
See, it turns out now that हमारे फैमिली में, दमानी फैमिली में 3 जनरेशन शेयर बाजार में है और चौथा तैयार हो रहा है, which is good news. My grandson Veer is getting ready to learn about the stock market. He already knows who Charlie Munger is and all that. So he's only 8 years old, but he already, he listens and he keeps telling me, why do you keep reading newspapers? आप दूसरा काम क्यों नहीं करते? Not understanding the impact of what I do, but that apart. So I would divide my family's journey into 3 parts. जो मेरे पिताजी थे, he had to make a living for the family. So he bought good shares and he sold them because he was trying to make a living out there. I had already had जो उनको platform बनाया हुआ था मेरे लिए. So I tried to move the family up by buying good shares and holding them. So the family wealth increases because he held on to the shares and index did well and the stocks did well. So he did well for himself. And my son, who's been with me now in the business 5-10 years, is now trying to make more concentrated bets. Buying good stocks, holding them, but buying them much more meaningfully than I did in terms of the quantity out there. So in the way it's an evolution of a family of investors. I'm not sure what my grandson or granddaughter Veer and Arna will do, but this is what has helped us so far.
And isme when like you also got to learn a lot of lessons from your father in the stock markets, etc. If I can just take a little step back to your childhood, as a student, were you always curious about numbers, mathematics, or were you always like introvert or a shy kid who used to be like, okay, jo chal raha hai, वैसे चलने देते?
I was more of an introvert. I always felt that it was not my cup of tea. The stock market was not my cup of tea. उस टाइम समझ नहीं रहा था कि जेनेटिक पुल भी एक बहुत बड़ी चीज होती है लाइफ में. So I wanted to do a career in anything else. So in my first 10 years of my professional life, I was a programmer out of India. I used to work in the computer systems analysis department out there. And I was pretty happy doing it. But जो बोलते हैं ना, जो किस्मत में हो ultimately होता ही है. So circumstances conspired to bring me back to the stock market. And that's what happens. But in the first 10 years of my professional life, I was not involved in the stock market. But जो आपको बताया था, जो bet मेरे father के साथ हुई थी $10,000 की, that changed the career because then that somehow triggered off an interest in the stock market. Losing money made me a better investor.
Wow, that's that's lovely. Like losing money made you a better investor. Before we understand your framework कि आप कैसे identify करते हो investments etc. What has been your best and worst investment in your career so far? And आपने कितना return percentage wise कमाया होगा या खोया होगा?
Worst, there's so many, you don't have enough time. I think markets में बहुत worst होते हैं. But जो चीज खुशहाल जी important है that every bull market, and I've had 4 or 5 bull markets in my 20-30 year career, should make you richer, wiser, stronger, and lose less and less money in each bull market as it progresses. I think that's a fair estimation that you're doing well in that case out there. So on the positive side, I've been blessed. I've had good friends. I've had good understanding. I picked many stocks that have gone up 10x, 20x, 50x, some even 100x. For example, the technology companies in the initial years, the spirits company, the PSU companies, many stocks have done very well out there. Have I lost money? Yes, I think even currently some of my stocks have done very badly. So the thing about Matt is that I'm not leveraged ever. I've always bet my own money. And if you bet your own money, even if you lose 90%, 80% in a stock, if you have a stock that goes up 10x, 20x, you can cover your losses. It's not a problem out there. So what I try, जो मैं हमेशा सबको समझाता हूँ, मेरे son को भी समझाता हूँ, is that we should take a more pragmatic approach rather than get worried about selling too early or selling too late or not buying enough. Is your overall portfolio, how is that done? And what we look for is that the portfolio should double in value every 3 years or so. So roughly about 23-24% compounded. It gets harder as the amount of money increases. But, broadly, we've been able to do 20% plus returns over my career. So that has been what my returns are. But it has been a very, some stocks have done exceptionally well. Some stocks have done badly. And I'd just like to warn your audience through this podcast. A lot of people, now put me on social media. It's all fake. I don't have any social media accounts. I come on podcasts where I am there. I don't have any Telegram account, WhatsApp accounts, channels recommending stocks. People recommend all bunch of stocks using my names. I'd like to warn them that it's all fake. I have absolutely zero interest in Twitter or X or Telegram public channels. I never disclose my channels. In fact, जैसे मैंने आपको समझाया था, I'm a proprietary investor. I'm not a broker. I'm not a trader. I'm not someone who gives arbitrage funds. I just invest my own money.
Any specific reason of not coming on social media, on Twitter or LinkedIn?
I enjoy my privacy a little bit, and I do come on the media because I've been coming for 30 years on the media because I enjoy talking about stocks with people. But, the investment is a very personal process. So I feel it's better to, I like to invest my own money. So I don't want to face that conflict of interest when you manage public money, whether you're managing your money or public money, which comes first. So I think just to keep the ship straight and to keep the silos separated, we've invested our own money for the last 15-20 years.
And ऐसा कोई stock हुआ है जहाँ पर where you had invested and it gone down to zero or ultimately bankrupt?
I mean, it has happened, but जैसे मैंने आपको समझाया था that it's always a loss that my balance sheet could bear. So in the early 2000s, I bought MTNL, for example, a famous hotel that didn't do very well. Even today, it's a penny stock, for example. I keep buying stocks that occasionally don't work out because my thesis is wrong or I made a wrong calculation of the stock. This happens all the time in the market. That's why it's very... कोई अनभक्ति से किसी को मत follow कीजिए. Everyone makes their mistakes. To understand the rationale of what they're doing and think about what you're doing before you follow, whether it's Ramesh Damani or anybody else. I think it's very important investors, do some of their own homework and take responsibility for what they're doing. The more important thing is to take responsibility, not to say, अरे मैंने लिया Ramesh Damani बोला इसके लिए डूब गया या बढ़ गया तो मैंने लिया था बढ़ गया. It doesn't work like that. So my humble advice to most of investors is, do a modicum of your own analysis and stand by whatever you make. No one is forcing you to buy the stock. And if you buy it, it is your decision. If you make money, it's your decision.
And for all the young viewers who are watching this, so you'll strictly advise them to be against leverage. Right?
I would, because that's what I've done it. It's not that देखो जो लोग leverage लेते हैं और मैं काफी दोस्त leverage लेते हैं अच्छी, they're very successful in doing it also. But you don't have to tell them. No one told Mozart how to write, symphonies. He just understood instinctively, though he was 12 years old, how to write symphonies properly. So if you need to take leverage, you'll understand the risks and the rewards of leverage. All right. But for most people, the road to ruin is leverage. So don't take it. For 99% of the people, the idea to take leverage, because they will not be able to sell at a loss. and it ultimately becomes too much of a burden for them, and then they start taking shortcuts, and in the market, shortcuts don't work. So my advice is, yes, don't take leverage. If you are taking leverage, you don't need to ask me. You're probably understanding the market better than I do.
Let's take some examples of a few companies that you had invested back in 1990s, and we just want to try to understand your framework and thesis, and then what did you think back then, and abhi at present also what are you thinking. So the first is you invested rupees 10 lakh in Infosys in 1993, and this also, like by 1999, like this compounded, this was like a multi-bagger. So आपने तभी कैसे आइडेंटिफाई किया इसको, एंड द रीजन ऑफ आस्किंग दिस क्वेश्चन इज कि आज जो ये व्यूअर्स देख रहे हैं, आपने जब आइडेंटिफाई किया था, हमको ये समझना है कि आज ऐसी अपॉर्चुनिटीज कैसे आइडेंटिफाई कर सकते हैं.
या जब मैं आया था 1980s में, इंडिया में बहुत बड़ा सीमेंट बूम चल रहा था, और आप मेरी बात सोचिए, आई कम बैक फ्रॉम अमेरिका, MBA डिग्री, एंड आई कुडंट नेम अ सीमेंट कंपनी, एंड एवरीवन in my office, including a lowly jobber, would tell me सीमेंट का भाव रायपुर में क्या चल रहा है, सीमेंट का भाव चेन्नई में क्या चल रहा है, इसकी क्या कैपेसिटी है और इसका क्या आउटलुक है. एंड आई फेल्ट completely at sea out there, because I realize now in retrospect there is a cement boom going on. So in a boom, everyone understands everything about the stock. जब मेरे early life थी, when I told you I worked as a programmer for 10 years in America, I was working as a software programmer, so I understood the software business. People in India didn't understand the software business. So when Narayan Murthy went public, it's hard to believe Kushalji came at market cap of 35 crores. Infosys came public at a market cap of 35 crores, earning about 5 crores profit at that time. 35 crores, I think even then, to buy 10% of the company required 3-4 crores, which is the price of a flat in Nariman Point. I mean, it is so cheap. But people didn't understand the business. Luckily, I understood the business. And so I happened to buy Infosys. It turned out to be 1,000 bagger perhaps from peak to trough. आज 4-5-6 लाख करोड़ का market cap है उसका. But उसमें क्या होता है कुशाल जी, that once you find a particular thing that appeals to you, it's like a domino. Other dominoes come. अरे दूसरी भी technology company होगी. Let's find out that. I found a company called CMC, which had done the Indian Railway and the BSE broking system. वो भी बहुत कौड़ियों के दाम मिल रही थी, तो मैंने वो ले लिया. फिर उसमें देखा कि वो PSU है, तो अगले दूसरे PSU ले लिया. So one thing led to the other. So it is not that एक ही दिन में मैं इंटेलिजेंट बन गया, एक शेयर लिया, उसमें पैसा बनाया, उसमें जाके समझा कि कैसे पैसा बनाया, and then try to replicate that formula across different companies in the industry and in different sectors also.
So इसमें if I can just deep dive, तो आपने बताया कि you understood the business of Infosys and that's why you took the bet of investing in Infosys. When you say you understood the business, तो आपको क्या exactly पसंद आया था, आपने क्या numbers देखे थे? Of course management is one, but what was your thesis on that company, and then कैसे आपने decide किया?
Thesis बहुत simple थी. I'll tell you, both these companies, Infosys, CMC. I used to work as a programmer, I told you, and my billing rate in America in the 1980s was $125 an hour. And here the billing rate was maybe $5-10 an hour. So there's a huge arbitrage opportunity. I realized that money would flow and work would flow to India. That was pretty obvious that it would flow. And then the background checks revealed that they were very technical profession people, and that turned out to be right. I'll tell you, with CMC was even more interesting. ये company हम लोग को मिल रही थी उस time 50 करोड़ के market cap में something. Government मनमोहन सिंह ने जो program चालू किया था divestment में, उसमें CMC लग गए थे. तो 40-50 करोड़, मे भी 25-30 करोड़ मिले, मेरे को ध्यान नहीं आ रहा अभी, 97-98 की बात है. It's hard to believe, Kushal ji, but the entire BSE trading system that even runs today was done by CMC. The entire Indian railway system is such a complicated system with so many trains, so many reservations, so many classes, so many outcomes, was done by CMC. Now, I knew from my experience that if this contract was given to IBM, Computer Indian Railways, they'll charge you $100 million perhaps to do it. Take 5 years, studies, do it. और ये कंपनी, पूरी कंपनी 20 करोड़ रुपए मिल रही थी. मेरे को तो समझ में नहीं आया था इतनी सस्ती कैसे मिल रही थी. बट एक बहुत बड़ा लेसन है शेयर बाजार में कि समटाइम्स सोना भी पीतल के दाम मिलता है और कभी पीतल सोने के दाम बिकता है. और हमारा जॉब है टू फिगर आउट जब सोने की चीज पीतल के दाम मिल रही है. दैट इज व्हेन यू ट्रूली मेक मनी इन द स्टॉक मार्केट. यू फिगर आउट व्हाट पीपल हैवंट फिगर्ड आउट. People you think ये टेक्नोलॉजी है, ये लोग आते जाते हैं, कोई प्लांट नहीं, मशीनरी, हाउ डू वैल्यू द बिजनेस, बेच दें उसको. But I understood the value of intellectual property because I'd worked in intellectual property. So that was my big edge, if you want, in life. And I think I parlayed that edge into being a successful investor.
And what about companies like BEL and United Spirits? So you also invested in these two themes. So इनका क्या thesis था? And you've also said once that the biggest failure of my life is the inability to dream big. And इसमें अगर आपने ज़्यादा पैसा डाला होगा high conviction से तो और like multi-bagger कमाया होता. तो ये दोनों का क्या thesis था?
I'll explain the thesis to you, but the more important point is, Kushal, you need to understand this, that even today, 2025, there are 3,000 billionaires in the world. Kitne? 3,000 billionaires in the world. That's it. There are 8 to 10 billion people in the world. Only 3,000 are billionaires in this world. I think out of that, 3,200 are in India. But that's not the point. The point is, this is a kid from South Bombay, okay, who knew nothing, is wet under, barely knows anything in the world. But the opportunity जो हम लोग के सामने थी, वो इतनी magnificent थी कि had I bet 10% of Bharat Electronics or 10% of Infosys or 10% of so many other companies, I'd probably be on my road to be a billionaire. The reason I say it is not really to feel sorry for me or regrets. अफसोस कोई जरूरत नहीं है शेयर बाजार में. But to tell you the opportunity ahead of me, and the opportunity to get wealthy was there. And the way to do that wealth is to write big, meaningful stakes in companies that really work out. Bharat Electronics 300 crore mil rahi thi when it got first in 97, 98 with a 5% dividend yield. जो आज से 3 लाख करोड़ है and nifty stock है. That has been the journey. जो आज dividend मिलता है Bharat Electronics में is more than the purchase price when I purchased the share. It's been that brilliant a stock. It was a public sector stock, and think of people who disparage public sector stocks. The kind of wealth it has created without ever diluting its equity, giving back cash to shareholders, and consistently growing. It hasn't grown dramatically. It's grown at 12, 15% CAGR. But over 30, 40 year period, growing at 15% CAGR can make you tremendously rich. And that's what I found out. So Bharat was very, very cheap. It had a monopoly business that couldn't go away. United Spirits, आपने दीवार मूवी देखी होगी. वहाँ परवीन बाबी ने एक बार में अमिताभ बच्चन को बोलता है, इसे देखो ये पी रहा क्योंकि आज खुश है, इसे देखो ये पी रहा क्योंकि आज गम में है, ये पी रहा क्योंकि आज दोस्तों के साथ है, ये पी रहा क्योंकि अकेला है. It's a universal lubricant. Whether you go to space or you go to Seattle, you will want a drink. It's a universal lubricant. और ये कौड़ियों के दाम पे भी नहीं बोल सकता हूँ, कौड़ियों से भी सस्ते मिल रहे थे इंडिया में, because people didn't understand the business. So once you realize the value of these brands, and I'd study the brands in, say, Harbin Beer in China and San Miguel in Philippines and Changa Beer in Thailand, I understood the value of Anheuser-Busch, Michelob in America. And I realized they were very cheap. So I think if you just apply yourself and keep thinking about values, sometimes they pop up like these great answers popped up to me.
So आपने बताया कि बहुत सारे लोग PSU को डिस्पैरेज कर रहे थे and that time also you were bullish about PSU. तो बाकी लोगों का क्या व्यू पॉइंट था? Like what were they saying? PSUs were not good.
भाई वो लोग क्या बोल रहे थे, गवर्नमेंट कंपनी है, कल क्या कर देंगे, क्या हो जाएगा. बट मेरा एक कहना है कि everything at a price. I am not saying you buy these things when they are terribly expensive, but there's a price for government interference also that you're willing to pay. There is, of course, truth to these businesses that sometimes there's government interference in them. Sometimes decisions aren't made for shareholders, but for the broader public interest. But अगर आपको कोई रुपए की चीज 5 पैसे में दिल रहे, तो I mean, you can take that risk. The stock market is always calibrating risk and reward. And I think people miss that, by making these blanket statements that I will only invest in high quality businesses. तो आपने ले लिया लीवर, HDFC और वो last 5 साल चले नहीं. आपने PSU ले लिया, आपके 30-40 गुना पैसा हो गया. So because the risk and reward were not commensurating. So my feeling is that they were making a fundamental mistake of not evaluating the risk versus reward.
Got it. So let's take an example, sir. So at present, let's say if you are identifying an investment opportunity, okay, the promoter is coming to you or you meet the promoter. What we want to understand now is two parts. One is the quantitative side, which is the numbers part about the company. One is the qualitative side, which is the promoter's part, the management, quality, corporate governance, etc. If you can break this answer down into two parts, like giving an example कि आपने numbers ये देखे ये company में at present, आप कैसे evaluate करोगे, कौन से metrics को कितना weightage दोगे, and then management quality के कितना weightage दोगे, क्या पूछोगे उनसे. So that'll be very easier for all of us to understand your mindset.
It's a very complicated question. I really, my first point of entry, Kushal, is that I will look at the market cap of a business. What is the value the market is ascribing to that business? और मुझे लगता है कि ये is it below the intrinsic value? Is it higher than the intrinsic value? To me, that's the thing. A lot of people spend a lot of time on earnings, quarter mein kya hua, margins expand hua ki nahi, EBITDA ke times. I really don't pay attention to that. I pay a lot of attention to market cap. I try to get in at a what I think is a decent market cap. The second thing I look for is what is the trigger for change? What can happen in the company, or why should it go up? Why should the market reward if it goes up? And third, I'll obviously look at the promoter and the debt in those companies out there. But that is always with reward to a risk. You could have bought the best run company in India in 93 in Lever and didn't make money for 10 years in that because it was the best company and everyone knew it and it was priced to be the best company. So how did it benefit you from that? So we always try to find the ones that are cheap relative to what their expected values are. For example, आप PSU की बात कर रहे थे, when these defense companies recently listed out there, मेरे जो BSE में ऑफिस के सामने से मेरे को सब PSU शेयर्स दिखते हैं, शिपयार्ड्स जो हैं, सब शिपयार्ड्स एकदम मुफ्त के दाम में मिल रहे थे, relatively speaking. But the good news is that they had order books of 5, 7 years. 25,000 crore, 50,000 crore की order book थी. They had dividend yields coming out there. And basically, we knew the government wouldn't mess around with the defense companies, that they would, be allowed to do what they want to do. And those stocks ultimately became 20, 30, 40x in the period of 5 years or so. So I think what helped me was that, A, you do your homework. Second, the starting point was so low. ये 1,000 crore, 2,000 crore में कंपनियां मिल रही थी, जो आज 1 लाख करोड़, 50,000 crore की होगी मार्केट कैप. So अगर आप स्टार्ट करो राइट पॉइंट एंड 2,000 crore जो भी मिल रही थी, they had cash on their books to justify that 2,000 crore. So basically the whole business was getting for free. So that is a good way to analyze, I feel. What I find very important to do is, I've been very lucky in this, that जो bull markets चालू होते हैं इंडिया में, every bull market will have leadership. जैसे आप जानते 92 में सीमेंट थी, 2000 में टेक्नोलॉजी थी. अभी 2019 में जो bull market चालू हुआ कोविड में, that is led by the public sector stocks. I've been able to get in front and identify the market leadership at that time. For whatever reason, luck बोल दीजिए, किस्मत बोल दीजिए, skill बोल दीजिए, I'm not telling you what it is, but I've been able to do that. So I've been able to get in front of that. और जब सबसे ज़्यादा पैसा bull market में बनता है, by getting the leadership right. Understanding where the leadership is, again, in 2000, if you bet on the technology companies, Infosys, Wipro, you made tons of money. Even in bad companies, even in good companies, you made money. The rest of the market was not doing much. So the same thing happened here. For the first 3-4 years bull market, PSUs बढ़ते थे. Baki Lever, HDFC banks barely moved in the market. So I think identifying the leadership has been very helpful. And we spend a lot of time trying to think about that. Whenever a bear market is there, instead of being very nervous or crying or not happy, we try and think, what will propel this market higher? What is the next bull market sector? So that has been very helpful.
So again, just deep diving into this, so can you just give an example of what will be the definition of a good promoter, good management? What kind of answers do you expect? कि okay, हाँ ये answer इसने ऐसे दिया. This is like an example of a good promoter, or some qualities that you really like. If you can just give an example.
I think we like people who are very, बोलते हैं integrity, energy, optimism. All have to be bundled in there, but there has to be integrity, because without integrity, they will just take you for a run in the money. So I find integrity is quite important. How do you judge integrity? You can, it takes a few minutes. Sometimes you just watch a video or watch him in an AGM or go to meet him. You can tell, if you're willing to listen, the answer is always there, So I very rarely have been, how should I put it, fooled by a promoter. समझ में आया था 15-20 मिनट बात करो, जिस ढंग से चाय पिलाता है, जिस ढंग से दूसरों से बात करता है, जिस ढंग से अपनी कंपनी की बात करता है, जिसको ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड हो, लास्ट 3 साल में उसने क्या किया, अभी बोल रहा है कि मैं 2 साल बाद ये कर लूंगा, then we have to see his past track record. What gives him the belief, other than that he wants to raise money, that next 2 years will be so good, So you look at the track record, we look at this, how sincere he is, what is the other interest in life, does he respect his own equity, does he respect his own employees? I think people think it's a very hard thing to do. How do you judge a promoter? हमको कैसे मालूम पड़ेगा? मालूम पड़ जाता है. I think if you spend 15-20 minutes at it, you have a good idea whether he's the guy you want to go to bed with or not.
So 15-20 मिनट में मतलब it's reasonable time to identify कि हाँ ये
I
promoter
mean, maybe
में
I'm exaggerating.
है तो
Maybe it
नहीं.
takes an hour, maybe it takes one meeting, maybe it takes two meetings, but it's something people can do, and I would encourage them to try and do it. Not to leave it. जो आदमी ज्यादा बड़बड़ के बोलते हैं, ज्यादा बहुत ब्रैश बोलते हैं, बहुत optimistic prediction करते हैं, I would be careful there. I would be very confident with people who are talking about the industry or have fire in their eyes, or मतलब get up and say तो मैं तो 7 बजे Saturday को भी आ गया काम करने, you know. Those are the kind of people looking for. People who believe in the business, believe in the company, and don't necessarily believe in the stock price. Believe in creating a great business.
Before investing in any company, on an average, आप कितने meetings करते होगे promoters के साथ?
Sometimes zero. I mean, sometimes I just buy the stock and then visit the company.
Okay.
It's quite possible I do both ways of that. But I typically invest in small cap and mid cap companies. So it's good to do a reality check. If you invest in a company like Lever or Reliance, you don't need to do a reality. There are too big companies for you to do a reality check.
Got it. And what about quantitative metrics like return on capital employed, return on equity? उस पे कितना weightage देते हो?
It is my most important metric that 50% I emphasize is market cap. What is the market cap? What is the enterprise value of the company out there? Then I want to see a path to profitability if it's not there already, or how they go. You know, do I believe the industry will keep growing? Do I believe the company will keep growing? Do I believe they have pricing power? If I ever get a company that can grow at 15-20% and have pricing power, that is what I'm looking for. Ultimately, that is the greatest business that you can bet on. It's very, very hard to find companies with pricing power. Infosys in its glory years grew at 30-40% plus at pricing power. That's where the market gave it a huge thing. So you find business ultimately that has pricing power and can grow. Those are the kind of businesses that you're looking for.
Right. And इसमें like when you say market cap, that is like 50% of the weightage you allocate to market cap. So market cap is an absolute number, right? All these other ROC, ROE that I'm mentioning, they are ratios. तो मार्केट कैप अब एक कंपनी का जैसे 2000 करोड़ है, किसका 5000 है, किसका 10,000 करोड़ है. तो इसमें लाइक जस्ट अंडरस्टैंडिंग कि इसमें लाइक कैसे लाइक 2000, 5000, 10,000, तो कैसे इसको इंटरप्रेट करोगे? वो तो स्मॉल कैप मिड कैप हो जाएगा, बट अच्छा है बुरा है, इन्वेस्ट करना है नहीं करना है?
आप देखिए जब आपने 15-20 साल पहले जो स्पिरिट्स कंपनी ली थी, you were getting McDowell's and UB Beer. There were two companies, one for the liquor business, one for the beer business. दोनों मिला के 400 करोड़ मिल रही थी आपको. 400 करोड़ में you're getting the Indian liquor market, which owned 50% of market. It's an absolute value. मतलब 400 करोड़ और क्या मिलने वाला है आपको? 400 करोड़ 350 करोड़ हो जाएगा, और तो कुछ होने वाला नहीं है. इंडिया में ऐसा नहीं है कि लोग बियर पीना छोड़ देंगे या विस्की पीना छोड़ देंगे, या इंडियन पॉपुलेशन नॉट यंग और इंडियन पॉपुलेशन नॉट गोइंग टू ग्रो, or they're going to ban alcohol tomorrow. They can't, because it's a revenue enhancement for the government. And the society is changing. It is no longer the society of the 1950s where drinking was frowned. Today it's socially acceptable to drink. All these were there. You're getting it for 400 crores. I mean, कोई भी चीज की हद होती है. अगर आपको एक साउथ बॉम्बे में फ्लैट मिलेगा 1 करोड़ रुपए में, आप क्वेश्चन बाद में पूछोगे, पहले खरीद लोगे, फिर देखो यार ठीक है बिल्डिंग खराब है, लिफ्ट खराब है, जो भी खराब है. Because the absolute value is so strong in that price. तो अगर आपको कभी कभी ये शेयर बाजार ऐसी चीज astonishing वैल्यू मिल जाती है आपको. And I think Warren Buffett explained it best, and explained it to your viewers, कि it is not a game of T20 where you have to hit out every ball. Otherwise they'll say you're a bum, get out, you don't want you to play in the team. It's not even test cricket where you have to at least keep the run rate moving out there. Every day the market throws a ball at you. Reliance at 1600, United Phosphorus at 800, ZE at 100 rupees, Mazgon at 2500 rupees. Every day throws a ball at you. And every day you have to do nothing. You can just sit and watch it idly. कुछ नहीं करने का मेरे को. हाँ करते जाओ. Occasionally ये आ जाएगा 40 रुपए में McDowell, 100 रुपए में GRSC. They will come with you with these kind of valuation. That's the day you want. That's the loose ball outside the off stump which you hit for a 6 by backing up the truck in those days. And that's the way the stock market game should play. सबको लगता है रोज कुछ न कुछ करना चाहिए. आज लिया, आज बेचा, मजा आ रहा है. That is giving you excitement. It's not giving you money. Wealth is coming when you buy, when something is very cheap and you understand it and the market doesn't understand it. जो मैंने CMC 20 रुपए में खरीदा था, McDowell 40 रुपए में खरीदा था, Bharat Electronics 30 रुपए में खरीदा था. These were all outstanding values that the market threw at me. And if I could grasp them, but not fully, that's where you truly made the 10, 20, 50 baggers in the stock market. So my suggestion is that don't think this is a business that you have to act every day. You have to think every day. You have to keep reading and keep being a market में रोज आना जरूरी है उसमें. But उसमें रोज कुछ ना कुछ खरीदना जरूरी बिल्कुल नहीं है. You keep watching it. जब आपको लगे कि ये तो मैं तो समझ में आता है कैसे ये भाव में मिल सकता है, then you step in and buy. That time you don't hesitate. Opportunity is not going to there be for a long time. Opportunity is a very fleeting visitor sometime. So that time you have to take advantage of that opportunity that market offers you. It's a very difficult science because to be able to move with such speed when the market is down is not a very rare combination, but that's what you want to aspire to.
So when you say market cap, basically you're trying to compare the market cap as a proportion of the TAM of the industry, right? Like that is the ratio that you're looking at. कि अगर ये total industry का 15-20% पे मिल रहा है.
That's not the only thing. एक market क्या है कि absolute number होता है, you know, कि भाई रुपए की चीज 10 पैसे में कैसे मिल सकती है. अपने को इतना तो अंदाज होता है कि क्या चीज ये एक flat in South Bombay is worth 20 crores. We can understand. We broadly understand this thing. A Maruti car is worth 5 lakhs. We understand these valuations, or maybe now 10 lakhs. Or, you know, a plane ticket is worth, 4 lakhs. We understand these valuations, okay? And occasionally, the stock market being it throws you some astonishing bargains. If you're getting a business class, you recently went to America. If you're getting a business class ticket to America for 1 lakh, I don't think you'd wait too long कि दूसरे एयरलाइन में क्या मिल रहा है क्या ठीक है यार 4-5 लाख टिकट मेरे को लाख में मिलता है I'm closing it, forget it. I'll figure out whether delay हो रहा है या दूसरी फ्लाइट है या entertainment खराब है कि नहीं, but 1 लाख रुपए मिले ना business class seat, I'll take it. So market is the same way that occasionally if you keep watching it, astonishing bargains are available, especially in a bear market, astonishing bargains are available. It then requires you to act and act decisively when you do that. It doesn't require you to act every day, because every day you will not get those bargains out there. Once in a while कोई कारण हो जाएगा, कोई people distress में होंगे या bear markets होंगे या earnings will be bad or some reason will come up and you get a truly astonishing bargain. If you can have the discipline to wait for those days, and I don't necessarily have that discipline, but partial discipline, you'll really end up doing really well. I think Warren Buffett gave a very good example, Kushal. A bunch of MBA students asked him pretty much the same question. And he said, if there's one piece of advice I'll give you, is that when you graduate from college, think you have a punch card with 20 holes in it. Okay, every time you make an investment decision, one hole is gone. So you can make 20 investment decisions in your life. That's it, 20. And if you follow the discipline, you'll probably make up more money than if you make a decision every week or every month that you do. So sometimes in a lot of businesses, activity is important. You have to go out, meet clients, shake hands, read, understand conferences, strategize, build new products. Stock market is one business where inactivity is more important. You have to sit on your ear and keep thinking and keep watching. And people think you're not doing anything. But you're constantly thinking, whether you're in the shower or whether you're with your friends or whether you're in a holiday, you're constantly thinking about valuations, And I think that's the key.
Yeah, I think I'd read somewhere that stock market is 99% temperament and 1% intelligence. Like the point of that quote was temperament is like the most important thing, the mindset.
It is. I don't think, as Buffett has taught us, that if you have 130 IQ, give 30 IQs to a neighbor. You don't need that in this business out there. But you need the temperament. You need to be able to move quickly, move against the crowd, and be not scared of your own conclusions that you come to. Very, very important. But more importantly, you have to be patient. You know, it's a business that when the time comes, you don't even have, that doesn't give the time. Then you have to move with a rapid velocity and close the deal. But otherwise, it might be 6 months, 1 year, you have no deals and you have to sit it out.
And in between, like you also had investments in companies like Gati Logistics, and you were bullish on the water sector as well. So, ye kaun sa time frame tha, and then logistics as a sector, like what was happening that time?
They do okay. I think Gati never lived up to its potential. A lot of my companies, see, this is a tough business. To be able to bat 100 is virtually impossible. If you bet 50, 60, you're good. But here is the matrix that you should look at, which I explained to you earlier. First is that when you have winners, how much do they go up? They go up 50x, 100x, 200x. Then you'll cover. It's Peter Lynch ne kaha tha, the saying is that you should always water your flowers and cut your weeds. Log kya karte hain? They water the weeds and cut the flowers. पैसा आ रहा है तो उसको बेच देते हैं, पैसा नहीं आ रहा तो रखते हैं लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टिंग के लिए. So that is a mistake to make in life. So let your winners go, let it ride. Had I sold my Infosys when it had doubled or tripled or even quadrupled, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'm a product of getting a stock right and holding it on for a long periods of time. And that taught me to hold other stocks also for a long period of time. Because I made, from my initial investment, a small fortune by holding on to Infosys for a period of time. So I watered that flower. I didn't sell it just because it doubled or tripled. So it's a huge mistake to, stock double ho gaya, bech dene ka. It's okay for a trader. It's okay for some people. But if you're building long-term wealth, you better find a business that's going to do well in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. That's my thinking.
How many years did you hold Infosys?
I think probably 10 years at least.
Okay.
I sold it in the correction of the 2000 bull market.
Okay. And that was 1000x from the time you had invested?
Something. I think must have sold it at 600x, but I didn't sell at the top. I sold it on the way down. But even then I made 600x or something. I don't know the exact numbers, but it was a very profitable trade.
Got it. And you said that you usually target doubling your money every 3 years, which is around 24% CAGR. But if I ask you, how many times have you been right in investing in the stock market? Like अगर आपने 100 stocks में अगर डाला होगा, तो कितने times कौन से stock में you have been right in terms of proportion?
I see a lot of stocks won't go anywhere. They will, ठीक है, कभी double हो जाएगा. Then you realize business prospects aren't good. Bear market starts and go out there. But every bull market, every new bull market, there should be something in your portfolio that is the superstar. They'll go up 10x, 20x, 50x also out there. So, for example, in 2000, we had a lot of the technology stocks that went up 20, 30, 40, maybe 200x also at some point. In the 2004 bull market, we had stocks like McDowell and, Godrej and all that, which also did very well at that time. In this current market, we have stocks in the PSU that did very well out there. So I have lots of stocks. I run a fairly diversified portfolio. So you will always find stocks that do very well in my portfolio, stocks that don't do very well in my portfolio. But that's just a part of my beast. So how do I correct myself is what I told you, is you try and do, look at a portfolio level, how you're doing. Individually, you make a lot of mistakes. But portfolio, broadly, if you double your money every 3 years, you're on the right track.
Yeah, I think that even if, let's say someone, I might be wrong, but my thesis is that, let's say, even if someone is right, maybe around 25-30% of the times, but that is like a multi-bagger, or that is like a very good high conviction bet, even they'll make good money despite the fact that they have been wrong 70% of the time, which brings to the Roger Federer example where he said that he was just right 54% of the time in all the matches, but he's like the number one player in tennis. So what do you have to say?
I think that's basically true. I mean, it's just, you have to hold on to your winners. I think aap sochiye, suppose you bought Infosys and you sold it at double the valuation, and you bought MTN and it went down 100%. You would be back to square one. You wouldn't make money. Most people make that mistake. जो 10 का 15 हो गया, अरे बेच दो, प्रॉफिट आ रहा है, बेच दो, 15 का 12 नहीं हो जाए, वापस they're so scared of their business. So the way to solve the problem is to understand what you're buying. I mean, for example, to give you again an example which I quote many times, the McDowell example. 400 crore में आपको India's liquor industry मिल रही थी. What is the India population size? 1.4 billion. We're getting for 400 crores. What is you compare it to any other country in the world? What the population was and what the market cap of the liquor business. You realize it was an astonishing bargain that you were getting out there. But once you've done the homework, even if the stock doubles, you won't sell it, or triples, or even up 10 times, you're only going to sell it, because even then it was cheap. That's what's called a margin of safety. That's the margin of safety we had. Occasionally शेयर बाजार में मिलता है ऐसा. आप में ये मत पूछिए क्यों मिलता है, लोग क्यों पागल, लोग होते हैं. That's the way the nature of the businesses are there. You will get these in the bargain. You have to convince yourself and believe that, because it happened repeatedly. Human emotions don't change. They always go from fear and greed. तो fear में मिल जाता है, लोग कौड़ियों के दाम बेच जाते हैं चीज. I'm sorry they're doing it, but I'm there to take advantage of it sometime.
You've been through many stock market crashes, 1992, 2000, 2008, 2020. आपका mental framework कैसा था during all these market crashes, and any strategies that helped you in order to just survive all these crashes?
Yeah, I think market जो ऐसा game है, it kind of signals to you. If you watch the market every day, ये top हो गया बाजार का. You might find it a bit more frequent, but market ऐसा नहीं कि एक दिन suddenly डूब जाता है. Or if it suddenly it recovers also typically. Suppose an incident like 9/11 happens, then the market will go down, but then it will recover also in a short order. Market signals to you. Typically, leverage ज़्यादा होगा system में, or the way people react to news changes. Good news आता है, share नहीं बढ़ता है. If it's a bearish market and it wants to be a bull market, bad news will come and the stock won't go down. So we watch these very, very carefully. or we find the valuations of the company very cheap compared to what we think the earnings profile is for the next 1, 2, 3 years out there. So that's when we step in and buy. So I pay a lot of attention to, it's not easy, but I try to spend a lot of time thinking when the bear market is ending or when a bull market is ending. Typically bull markets end in euphoria. जब लोग सब आसमानी सुल्तानी बात करते हैं, they're talking, ये हो जाएगा. I mean, people were talking कि Infosys 10 लाख हो जाएगा यार, ACC 5 lakh हो जाएगा. All the kind of nonsense. Market is extremely leveraged in the system. That is always a good sign. Market stops reacting to news. There'll be lots of clues that you will find out there. So, अगर bear market आपको लग रहा है, then you should take some money off the table. Because markets have always taught us that in a bear market, गधे भी घटते हैं और घोड़े भी घटते हैं. Everything falls. So everything will be down 30, 50, 70%. So that time just take some money off the table. I mean, it's not a thing that I would recommend you do every 2 months, every 3 months. But occasionally market cycle warns you. लफड़ा हो गया बाजार में. At that time, just take some money off.
And during all these crashes, like, were you in cash or were you deeply invested? You had taken out your portfolio?
See, I had taken out because I kind of figured out by reasonable measures that 2008, 2000, whatever, these markets are showing toppish signs. I've taken some money out to deploy back. But the one thing that I've learned in India is that you need to remain broadly invested. Maybe there are times when you just go 3 months into cash or something like that, but remain invested. जैसे मैं बहुत बार बोल चुका हूँ कि मैं आया था इंडेक्स 800 के नीचे था, अब भी 80,000 के ऊपर है. So the index itself is 100x in the 30 years I've been here. Individual stocks are 500x, 200x or whatever. So it broadly doesn't pay to time the market. Maybe you can switch around from one industry to the other if you feel overvaluation, undervaluation. But broadly remain invested in high quality businesses.
30 years in, sorry, you're saying 100x in 30 years. Oh,
100x in 30 is 800 to 80,000.
Yeah, it's around what, 16, 17%.
Yeah, something.
Wow,
it's about a
which is
bit
a lot.
14, 15%, but without dividends. Dividends included, it gets better. So that's a good return, and that's for the index. I mean, the individual companies will obviously do so much better.
Yeah, exactly. And at present, abhi, like, you're fully invested into equities or you're on cash? Some
I'm
proportion?
on a little bit cash, more than I like to be in cash. I tell you, jab election aa raha tha between May and September, I was very cautious on the market because it was showing signs of euphoria, big IPO investments. आपने याद होगा Hyundai का IPO आया था, ये आया था, वो आया था. So I was getting some cash. The trouble with me is that I'm a very slow investor. So once I get into cash, to reinvest that, I can't do it in 48 hours of even 1 week. I do it in a more gradual process as I visit companies. But increasingly, Kushal, as I visit so many businesses in India, I knock on the doors, meet management, I see no reason to be bearish. I think what we are happening in America is not necessarily positive, but we'll figure it out as a country. And I think it's a good time as any to remain invested.
So, abhi at present, it's August 2025. So, the short-term and long-term view would be bullish on the index or stock
The
market?
long-term view is bullish. The short-term, I don't know. See, it depends on what happens in America. And I'm not particularly bullish on what's America. But having said that, अगर आपको कोई चीज अच्छे दाम में मिल रही है, अभी आज के दिन कोई वो wide ball outside the off stump full toss आ रहा है, so definitely you should take part in it. I'm not saying that because I'm bearish on America, you should not invest in India. I think it's fine.
What would your asset allocation strategy look like? Is it diversified into, like, equity is one, of course, which is the biggest one. But apart from that, anything specific like gold, real estate, fixed income, etc.?
I have 3 diversifications. They're equity, equity, and equity. I have nothing else. I have a house, I have a car, whatever, but I never consider that a part of my wealth. That's just a part of living. I have always kept either in equity or cash. That's it. Waiting to be invested in equity. Never believed in any other asset class. And my bankers are horrified. They say, "Sir, ये क्या करें आप? थोड़ा debt में डाल दीजिए, थोड़ा ये डाल दीजिए." I said, I know what I'm doing. I've understood the risk and I'm happy with that risk.
Got it. And like, let's say about gold, etc. But don't you think that थोड़ा diversification करके gold में ऐसे safe assets में डालना, that doesn't make sense?
I mean, gold particularly I don't like because, it's just one of those silly things that India have grown up with, liking gold. And, it does well for periods of time. But the 100-year compounding rate for gold is 3%. So why would you want to be? The 100-year compounding rate for gold is 3%. So, there are periods when it does very well, like right now it's doing very well. But, and I'm not going to be able to pick out the time and people will get angry on me because they made a lot of money in gold. And good luck to them. I don't think. But gold doesn't pay you a dividend. And kitna gold खरीदोगे? आप कहाँ move करोगे gold को? If you want to take gold out, you can't. Stocks can be sold in 24 hours and liquidated. No tax problems, no issues that you have in equity. Plus, it pays you dividend. The stocks that I bought, like I told you, Bharat Electronics, now pay me more than my cost price is dividends per year. Where do you get that in gold? It's just a physical thing. It doesn't help. I'm invested in organic companies that are running India. I own a part of India enterprise every time I own stocks. I kind of like that.
And do you also believe in mutual funds? Or
Not really. I mean, to be honest, that's mera kaam kya hai? My job is capital allocation. I'd rather allocate to businesses myself rather than give it to a fund manager. Thoda bahut hai, but nothing meaningful.
So at present, I was just going through some of your portfolio companies as well, mentioned on a lot of websites like Goldiam International, Badiware Specialty Chemicals, etc. So, एक कोई भी आपके जैसे I read somewhere, I might be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, that 50% of your portfolio is allocated to 5 stocks. Firstly, is that true?
I mean, I would not 5 stocks, maybe 10 stocks.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
So if I just want to understand, abhi at present, what's your thesis looking like? Key sector wise, okay, what are you betting on? And if you've invested in a company like the ones that I've mentioned, ki aapka thesis kya tha before investing in any of the companies that you've invested?
I mean, just to give you an example of Goldiam, which I still own, so I'm not trying to recommend it to anybody at all, is that I bought it when the bull market started. It's very cheap, trading below cash value. So it just made sense. I've still held the stock. I've sold a little bit, but still hold the stock. But they were just incidental investment I've done. Where do I feel? See, ये question मुझे बहुत पूछता है कि अच्छा आपने टेक में बहुत पैसा बनाया, आपने पीसी अभी क्या बनाया? See, it is investment that are good always made at a price. कि ये market cap में अच्छा लगता है. I can't predict the price 5 years from now, 10 years from now and say उस time cheap रहेगा. In the next 10 years will be better for that. So we'll leave that aside. What do I think will do well over the next 3 to 5 years, starting today in August 2025? As a new sector, I will tell you that जो आप आजकल कभी भी कोई paper खोल लो, there are always 2 stories on rare earths, how important they are and how important self-sufficiency they are. There are 3-4 Indian companies working in that area. Rare earths, critical metals, minerals. In that area, generally, I think you'll find some pickings if you look at those stocks in there. Some of the PSU stocks may have had their run, but there's some still available and cheap, and I think they will do well. So I would suggest to you, I have a very diversified portfolio, that if you're incrementally putting money in there, I would suggest you look at some rare earth plays that you do and look at some public sector stocks. I think wait till the quarterly results are out before you make fresh investments. But
what would be your sector-wise allocation in your stock portfolio?
I actually don't do that. I really don't do that homework. I mean, it happened to be over leverage to public sector stocks in the last 4 or 5 years. But I look at companies, I look ground up. I go visit companies, I go buy companies. I rarely look and say कि मैंने बहुत financial कर लिया या बहुत industrials कर लिया. मेरे को अच्छा लगता है, buy it.
And do you invest outside India as well in the foreign markets?
I do. This is a small amount just to keep myself active. Yes, I do.
So as of now, any specific country that you think there is an investment opportunity or your...
I'll tell you, it's more easy to talk about foreign stocks. So I'll tell you my latest idea. I just put it on the record because there are 1.4 billion Indians and there are 1.4 billion Chinese. And the rest of Asia, maybe another billion people in Indonesia, Pakistan, all these people are there. So you're getting maybe 3-4 billion people living within 3-4 hours of each other out there. And as the world progresses and becomes this thing, they'll all want a vacation. And I believe the number one tourist destination in the world will be Thailand, to go there. Because not only they have shopping, they have cheap hotels, they have entertainment, they have nightlife, they have the whole gamut of experiences out there. So I believe there are 4 billion people living there. Maybe 5% of the people can travel every year. Right now, Thailand gets maybe 60 million visitors a year. I think they can easily be 100 million or so. So the biggest beneficiary of that boom is something I've called the Airports Authority of Thailand. So if they own all the 7 airports in Thailand. So whenever a plane lands, they get toll free. Whenever someone does duty-free shopping, they get some revenue. Their passenger service fee, they get a unit there. Because ultimately, everyone wants a vacation. And this is a great place to go for a vacation. Hotel chains can change. This thing can change. But this is a natural monopoly on their business. You can't build on the airport easily. You cannot take away the revenue. Now, the stock is down 30-40% from its peak. It was 60 baht, now down to 35-40 baht for some reason, because they were having some slowdown in Chinese tourist arrivals and slowdown in concession stands out there. But that will be rectified, I think. That's what I call a buying in a crisis. The market cap of the company is over $18 billion. Okay, I think it's a reasonable market cap to pay for what will be ultimately, in my opinion, the number one tourist destination. The one criticism also is that a lot of the business is regulated business, but a lot of the business is also unregulated. For example, the price in the duty-free shopping, the parking, the concessions, all unregulated. The parking fees are regulated, but the rest is unregulated. So I think, just because you asked me overseas, I bought a small amount, but I would something that I would keep my eye on. And, do your own homework. I'm not saying you go and buy it, but do your own homework. But since you're asking me what would be an international stock, and I talk freely about them, not Indian stocks, but I would say the stock that just, when I look at it, it makes no sense to me that it's, because this can be a compounding machine for the next 15, 20 years. It can grow at 15, 20% compounded for the next 15, 20 years.
Hypothetical, if let's say you would have gotten a chance to meet Charlie Munger, or now you get a chance to meet Warren Buffett, क्या question है आप जो उनसे पूछना चाहोगे?
I would just listen to whatever they said. I think that one of the great abilities is not to ask them, but to just listen to them. I mean, you can learn just so much observing how they behave, how they talk. I mean, it's not going to happen, but if it did, I think, probably be tongue-tied.
Warren Buffett, it might happen. I mean,
I doubt it. And at this age, for me, it might happen. It's unlikely, but of course, anything can happen.
And any other investor you really admire a lot, you would want to meet him or her?
I mean, I've been very lucky. I've done my own show, as you know. I've done Visits to the Streets. I've interviewed some of the best investors in India, some of the best investors overseas. I've, had a great privilege. I probably haven't met Peter Lynch, so that's probably someone I would still like to meet in this thing. A lot of people ask me about some of my mentions in India. And, I think I'd like to say Chandrakant Sampath, because I met him. It's hard to believe. The first day I was in the ring, the first day I went to the physical ring in the BSC, I had been introduced to him before. I met him in the ring because he used to hang around there. And I remember asking him what share to buy. And I still remember what he told me. He said, there's a company that trades there in that corner. Go buy it. It's called Indian Shaving Products Limited, which today is Gillette, which now became Procter & Gamble Health. And the stock was at maybe $15 or something in 1989, maybe. Today, I just checked the price before I came here. It's closer to 10,000. So over a 35-year period, it's a 20% compounded rate of return that the man Simple ID gave me. Sitting in a corner of the BSC ring, he told me something that's for 35 years compounded at a CAGR of 20% or so. So he was a very good stock picker, very good compounding machine, and extremely free with his knowledge, very willing to share with people whom he liked.
And what about Carlos Slim? What have you learned from him?
Carlos Slim I read about him when I was in America at that time, and I always aspired to be like Carlos Slim. He was a Lebanese immigrant who settled in Mexico and became Mexican. And when asked about his success, he always said that I was always bullish on Mexico. And how did he express it? He said when people were panicking in Mexico, Mexico used to go through its periodical crisis of currency devaluation and Big Brother interference in America and things like that. And the currency would collapse 30, 40, 50% every time a regime change happened. But he always remained invested in Mexico. And when that ball came, the full toss, as they call it, after the Ostam, which were the public sector stocks in Mexico when they had to be diversified, Telephone de Mexico, some auto ancillary company, Pemex oil, whatever. He stood there and bought it. When people were fleeing away, he stood there and bought it. And those rewarded him handsomely, and he became, I think, one of the richest people in the world after that. I remember reading a story in late 80s, 90s when I was still in America. And I remember thinking, why can't I be India's Carlos Slim? And I think it requires a bit more guts, a bit more savvy than I had. But clearly, he was a great inspiration.
Yeah, I also read somewhere, you also talk very openly about the story of two sisters who flew to America, and one of them worked with Benjamin Graham. And then
not two sisters, there's a couple actually. There's a couple actually with that.
Yeah. Couple, yeah, correct. And then one of them got introduced to Benjamin Graham and then Warren Buffett, and then they made their net worth to $200 million and then donated. Like that was something which was...
Yeah, and they flew the punchline was that, as the Wall Street Journal reported, when they flew to make the largest single donation in the history of Israel, they flew economy. Think about it,
Wow.
And how many people would have the kind of humbleness to do it? I can't think of a better story to explain sometimes the value system that these truly extraordinary people have.
How has your lifestyle changed after gaining some sort of money success? Like lifestyle before stock markets, then you got some success, and today, like how has the lifestyle changed?
I keep telling my son that I lead a very gilded life. To give you an example, when I was growing up and struggling, I would have to go to, visit companies, say, at that time. At that time, I would do the morning, evening, so that I wouldn't have to spend on the hotel stay. And even to go to the airport, I probably could afford a taxi at that time, but I would say, I'll take an auto from the station and do it, just to save money. I was that very conscious. So relatively speaking, I lead a gilded life, Kushal, now. As the car picks me up, drops me where I go, the management is ready to meet me. So, I feel very blessed in this way. And I think the point I want to share with your audience is that, you live your life forward. Obviously, every day is a new day that comes in out there, but you understand it backwards. And I think as I look back at my life, I think we were the first generation, the lucky generation out of India. We were born a little bit after independence. We came of age in 1989, 1990. What happened in those 2 years? The Berlin Wall fell and Manmohan Singh started liberalization. And that was a huge tailwind for us that carried us for the next 30, 40 years. And that made us all prosperous, all stronger, all, more financially free. And I really feel blessed. I could have been born in Congo, or I could have been involved in a civil war. I could have been born, who knows? I was lucky I was born in the right place, right time, and could take advantage of these opportunities. So my generation of people, the midnight children who were born in the latter cohort in the late 50s, mid 50s, we're very, very blessed. We came to an India that was just ready for change, and we were ready to understand the change, and we could take advantage of the change. So I do lead a more gilded life now, a more, comfortable life. And I've been very lucky. It just so happened that way, that we lead a very blessed life out there. Having said that, I fear for this next generation. The world that we grew up and prospered in is changing even as I speak to you because of what Donald Trump. America is still such an important country. It is so important defense and so often economy, so important in cultural relationship. And he's single-handedly dismantling the things that made America great. And I don't think he'll end up making America great. But I think the world will find its own path. And I think maybe, if Trump leaves out of 4 years, there'll be a backlash against him and things will change. We can't say that. But I just feel that at least for the next few years, the world that America invented is probably under threat.
One of the legendary investors of India were Mr. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, and you were quite close to him as well. What was your last interaction with him, and what do you like? What do you?
It was actually last interaction. A very interesting point you should ask. My last interaction with him was he was going to the inaugural flight of the airline that he launched, Akasa. I think it was Bombay Ahmedabad or something like that. It was due to fly, I think, next morning at 10 o'clock or something. So he called me the night before, August 14th. And he said, Ramesh, I booked 2 seats for you and Ruchi, my wife. I want you to come on the inaugural flight. And unfortunately, we had a family wedding, and that's it. I couldn't go on the flight with him. I think that was the last time I ever talked to him. I think maybe a few days after that, he had passed away. I tell you what is astonishing is that when you look back at his life, he didn't live long enough, but he lived maybe 30-year career. I think in that period, in my estimation, he's compounded in dollar terms at 40% plus. That's a ridiculous figure done. To compound in dollar terms at 40% plus, it's truly an extraordinary performance. And another measure of his vitality was that he passed away 3 years, and I think you look at his portfolio today, I think it's pretty much remained intact. And it's up another 50, 60, 70% in the 3 years since he passed away. So that's the kind of bulletproofing his portfolio did. I think he was aware that he was a leader and that his portfolio would have to stand public scrutiny. But I think he passed with flying colors at the end of the day.
I read somewhere that he taught you about taking high conviction bets, and he taught you about the importance of going all in if you're very positive or bullish about the companies.
You may have taught me that, but I don't think I learned it well. I think it's a very difficult thing to do, and I think he didn't suffer from much self-doubt. He had no self-doubt. I still suffer from self-doubt. I think it's part of my product of my upbringing, middle class, whatever. I don't want to give excuse to it, but I wish I had more guts like him. We all have to live our life.
But don't you think this can be changed, like for yourself?
It's getting better, but I think you can't teach an old horse new tricks. I'm too old now to learn and change it. I'm more cautious by nature. That's my inherent nature. But I balance it up with other things. While he took it to a deep end, is kind of living at the edge, took a toll on his health ultimately. So I try to be more balanced in my approach. So God doesn't give everyone everything. And I think maybe this will come to my son Ashok and not be with me. I really have no regrets. I feel that as I told you before, I feel I lived a blessed life. I lead now what I think is a gilded life. And I just feel it's very important for us who have been part of this from 1990 onwards to share with you through this podcast and other means the lessons that we have learned, and serve as role models that yeah, it's good to back up the truck and buy it, but not everyone can do it. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. I mean, you have to, at least I can sit down and appreciate how difficult it was to put money in the table and go all in on some of the bets he did. It took a huge amount of courage. And remember, during those most productive years where he made his money, we had incidents like 9/11 and Ayodhya and all these things, and he had to weather all of them and be bullish despite that. So I don't want to detract from his accomplishment. I wish I could have done it, but I clearly fell short.
What do you think is his most courageous bet he had taken in his entire career?
I think he made a lot of good calls, but I think his latest calls, I think I remember visiting him in the hospital during the COVID time. I mean, not from COVID, but he had some other ailment out there. And I think almost berated, as they call it. He saw me, mentioned me, says, Ramesh, Hindustan mein sab kabada lagta hai. I mean, this guy is sitting in the ICU and he's talking about the markets. He was that focused on the markets, and he was that clear that this bull market in the middle of COVID had started, and he kind of called it. He said the bull market started in India. We were not understanding it, And he also circumspect enough to say that maybe I won't live to see it, but Ramesh, don't miss it. I mean, that was the message that he gave. So
wow.
I think I feel really bad that Bhaiya, as we all called him, didn't live to see his children grow up. I don't think there could be any bigger punishment than that. But I think the lessons he taught us are eternal.
I was reading somewhere, I've hosted like a lot of stock market people who know him very closely, like you. One of the persons was telling me that whenever he used to sit in Jeffries, which was his favorite place, a lot of people used to come to him and ask for some stock tips, etc. And he used to be very open, and he used to just tell, "Ha, theek hai, ye, wo, etc., etc." Like the thing was that he wanted to share. He didn't want to make money himself. He wanted all his people who are there with him to grow with him, and that is a mindset which is very rare to have these days, is what I feel. That was something which was...
That's absolutely true. And that's what I told you. I mean, the fact is that the way they view the market and the way they taught me to view the market is there's a river flowing. If I take 2 buckets and someone else takes 2 buckets, there's still enough water in the river. Everyone can make money in this market out there. And if you help each other, maybe they'll help you at a time when you need it. So I learned those very important lessons from him. He's right. He was very free in sharing his information, having a drink, talking to people. Truly a legendary investor.
I read one of the interesting stories where one of your friends gifted your son HDFC Bank stock when he was born, which was worth rupees 50,000 at that point in time. Those shares were there and it became multi-bagger. My question to you now is, what is one stock you would you had gifted your grandchildren when they were born?
Yeah. Great question. I do give them. I mean, I try to give them something on their birthday every day, having learned from that example. I don't want to share which ones I've gifted because that would create unnecessarily thing. But it's a great idea to do it. I mean, think about it. 200 people attend that ceremony when he was 10 years old, and I think 199 gifts are forgotten. कोई clothes दिया, कोई cash दिया, कोई toy दिया, कोई मिठाई दिया, सब भूल भुला गए. कोई एक गिफ्ट अभी तक याद है, वो बढ़ता गया. So the lesson, Kushal, is help the people younger than you invest in appreciating assets, not depreciating assets. So when you buy a toy or clothes, that's a depreciating asset. Of course, you need them. I'm not denying that you need a little bit of toys for children, but also help them inculcate the habit of appreciating assets. You never know what could be.
Yeah. So you're saying every year, like on their birthdays,
I try. I've tried to make it. I haven't done it for the last year or two, but I try to do that every birthday.
And they have like good knowledge about companies, your grandchildren, and they know about.
Not really. I mean, they're still, my grandchildren are 7 and 5, so clearly they don't have much knowledge. But I tell you an interesting factoid. When my grandson was young, instead of teaching him alphabet like B for ball and C for cookie, we used to teach him B for Berkshire and C for, what other company with C is, So we actually taught him the alphabet by companies rather than this thing. Wow. And you could rattle off, Z for Zara, whatever, Z, X for Xerox. He knew all the companies. Because now he's forgotten them probably, but now he's become a basketball nut. He's really, truly passionate about basketball. But I tell you, it's one of the great privileges of my life watching them grow up.
Yeah. Yeah, that feeling is different when you become a grandfather.
Oh, absolutely, no question about it.
Yeah. And just your role as a chairman of DMart as well. So you were chairman of DMart till 2024. So one is an investor hat that you had. One is like an operator hat of like being involved with DMart. So being an operator and investor, like these are two different things. So when you were an operator, like what are some things that were different here and some learnings from the entire DMart story or experience?
See, DMart story was, you generally tend to look for an all-star team. This is not an all-star team. This is just, regular people who built one of these extraordinary businesses in India based on some basic retailing rules that the original promoter had advised them that this is what we're going to offer. And he had in fact changed the rules of the game, but those were the rules that were established. Give it a discount, pay your vendors on time, keep a good assortment available, stock what the customer needs, not what you think is going to sell. And they built a great business based on that. But they were also great executors. They're great executors. I mean, it's a very complicated business. If you look at the back end of a retail chain, it's very massively complicated. And they built that to scale and they built it to size. And it was truly one of the great extraordinary privileges of my life to be the chairman of the company for 10 years as I was. It's hard to believe that I'm so old now that I retired as the chairman already. So I'm already that old. But, it was an extraordinary privilege to work with these men. And I think they've built an extraordinary company and I see no reason why that will stop.
What's the most interesting project you worked in those 10 years of stint? What was like challenging and how did you solve that?
No, see, at the board level, we were not involved in day-to-day thing at all. We just involved, make sure the culture was there and make sure that the strategy was followed. And the playbook was very efficiently followed. So we really had the most cordial meetings. I mean, all we had to make sure that the culture was followed. The culture was followed. So there's nothing really
You said in one of the previous podcasts that one thing that you really admire about Mr. Radhakishan Damani ji, who is the founder of DMart, is that he is a very, very good listener and he has very sharp listening skills. What are some other things or other memorable interactions with him that you really admired and wo interactions aapko aaj bhi yaad hai?
See, R.K. Damani is an extraordinary human being. I mean, I can't tell you enough what a privilege it's been to head one of his companies. So I will give that public tribute. But there has been no one in India who's gone to 3 careers and excelled in them. He was, I think, one of India's best speculative minds. He was India's one of best investor minds. And he's now one of India's best entrepreneurs. He's built a, BSE 50 company to that side. So extraordinary. What did Steve Jobs do? He built 2-3 businesses. What does R.K. Damani build? 2-3 businesses, okay? Maybe domestic in nature, but still they're very important businesses or careers that he's had. So And what is extraordinary is that he built this just on basic insights, good listening skills. And he's like another people mentioned, so happy to share it with his circle of friends or people that he knows. So happy to share advice, lend a shoulder, help you in your career. There was a time when I was struggling, and he would make me buy a particular share because it was going up. Extraordinary amount of keen insight. I think more importantly than that, it was not that he was. I think the way I would characterize Rakesh or RK is that, and that's the biggest tribute I can give them, that they didn't give me the fish. They taught me how to fish. And that made all the difference to my life. Today, I'm a product of someone who understands the market and so on. So my stocks have been different than RK, some common, some different than Rakesh. That's not the point. But I know what to look for. And that's because these gentlemen had the magnanimity and the wherewithal to teach me how to fish.
And like specifically with Mr. Radhakrishnan Damani ji, I had also read somewhere that if there is a board meeting, he'll be the person who will let everyone speak first, absorb, and then he'll be the last person to just, guide or maybe ensure that, okay, whatever is happening in the meeting is summarized. That is something which I had heard about.
This is not even true in a board meeting. In fact, in a board meeting is very rarely attends board meetings, but in a group of friends or in an analyst meeting or in almost any circle, everyone wants to talk, show how intelligent they are. He's the guy who wants to listen. It's just extraordinary. I just wish I could learn that from him. It's just such an extraordinary ability.
Were you? I'm sure you were there for his Jaipur birthday party, which was there last year. I mean,
my friend, I was organizing it. I was one of the organizers.
Oh, okay, you were the organizer. I'm sorry. So, any interesting?
It was held at his hotel, but I organized it with my friend Amal Parekh.
Oh, okay, got it. So, what was the most interesting? It was a 3-day party, right?
Yeah, it's just a joyous occasion. I think we had friends for 40 years, and there's no agenda at all other than. Because of the electronic trading, we don't meet that often. So I thought it's a great idea. What I call us the geriatric generation because you're all getting old. So before we really pass off in the ethosphere, we should get together. So we had 3 days of joyous meetings, talking, reliving old memories. I think what I found very heartening is that a lot of our children now are in the markets. So we invited them also. So we got a chance to meet them, to be introduced to them. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I heard you guys also played cricket and
we had a cricket game. We had a roundtable discussion on markets. We had a Starbucks put up there. So it was a lot of fun.
Wow. And all the investors, public market investors.
All the brokering community, some investors who have been part of the markets for 30, 40 years. Almost everyone showed up. I think there were a few cancellations, but almost everyone showed up.
Why do you think Mr. R.K. Damani doesn't appear on any podcast or media interviews?
Why doesn't he appear? I think a lot of successful investors don't do that. I think Nimesh Vai doesn't do it. RK doesn't do it. I think it's just a personality trait. I mean, Rakesh was, of course, a very successful investor who did do it. So there's nothing like that. I think it's just, he prefers working in quiet, under the radar, if you will. So.
But I think he's active in the Flame investment.
He's not active. He comes the Flame Investment Masters course. He comes on the last day and it's always such a treat to hear him. He talks to the student, gets a photograph with them. So he does speak, but very rarely and definitely not with the cameras on.
Yeah. You're often called as a book with 2 legs. So you read because you read a lot. Like I've also read somewhere you read almost for 4 to 5 hours every day.
I used to when I was your age. I would probably read a lot, probably 6 hours a day.
Wow, that's a lot. So if you would advise any young investor who's watching this, your favorite or some top 3 books that they should definitely read about investing?
I tell you the latest books, the couple latest books I've enjoyed. I've pretty much said the ones I've enjoyed. Anything on Buffett Munger you should read. You just read everything about Buffett Munger, wherever you get, doesn't matter. But a new book on Buffett, which I particularly like by Alex Morris, is called Unscripted Buffett and Munger. Okay. It's a compilation of whatever they said in the various AGMs on every topic. Could be on Coca-Cola, could be on derivatives, could be on corporate governance, could be on politics in America. So it's a brilliant book. It's a great summary of the feelings over the last 40 years and what they said. The one book I really enjoyed reading, I'm not yet through with it completely, is I think Alex McGee's book, Apple in China. It's a pretty interesting book on how Apple and China really help each other become, global powers, if you will. So those two books I enjoyed. But generally, you read. I mean, in this business, the periods of inactivity means you read. You spend time reading. You may not be doing buying, selling, meeting people, but you need to read. So generally, to start off with, read a couple of good international newspapers. I would say the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times are very good places to start with, particularly the editorial section. And if you can, read them in the physical copy, not in the electronic copy, because then you won't read a lot of the stuff. So I feel that the physical copy sometimes is better for most people to read. Read anything on Buffett and Munger you find, the letters, books, and there may be a dozen books on them, so you can read a lot out there. Lots of other Seth Klarman's books, lots of good books you can read, biographies you can read, tales. So, I mean, it's just a business that you read in order to get a little bit smarter.
How does a typical day in your life look like right now, right from morning to night?
I'm generally still, I'm, closer to 70 now, but I still lead a pretty, busy professional life. I mean, I'm in the office by 9:30 and I leave by 6:30. Yeah. And pretty much, I'm spending thinking about markets, visiting companies or meeting people like that. In the evenings, I've become a bit more bad. Instead of reading as I should, I probably watch a bit more of Netflix and YouTube than I should. But I do that. But I tremendously enjoy, as I told you, playing with my grandchildren. I think that's been, they're basketball nuts, so I play with them in basketball or whatever. But it's so much fun.
What do you watch on Netflix and YouTube?
Oh, YouTube, of course, I catch up with all the current event, what's going on. I'm fascinated by America, so I watch all the current events, what Trump is up to, what Congress is up to, what the elections foretell. We see that. With Netflix, there are always interesting serials. I think like Tehran was there, or that, whichever ones. I mean, I'm quite hooked to.
What's the latest one you're watching right now?
The one I saw latest, I just saw. I can't remember the name because you're putting me on the spot.
No worries.
I saw something in Netflix just 2 days ago, which I kind of enjoyed actually. But I can't recall the name. But I watched all the major, shows on Netflix. Particularly the series like Tehran and, those kind of stuff. Tehran was on Apple TV, not on Netflix, but I did enjoy that.
Apple TV, I recall I had watched We Crashed on Apple TV. I think that was a WeWork crisis, WeWork story.
Right, I've seen that.
That was pretty interesting. I mean, I was glued and I watched it, I think, in one night or I think 2 or 2 days. For 10 hours.
It's always binged. Yeah. If it's interesting, it has to be binge watched.
Yeah. And YouTube specifically, you have some channels or it's just random?
I generally watch US political news. I'm very, interested in that. So MSNBC, CNN, sometimes even Fox, sometimes even podcasts that come out from America, because I really, I find that very fascinating what's going on there. So,
has there ever happened an instance where someone who's a Bollywood celebrity asked you for some stock tips?
You heard that famous incident. See, you have to remember I lived in LA, which is Hollywood, right? So a lot of Bollywood stars would come to, and I happened to know them because we were part of the film circle at that time. Many years later, I met some Bollywood A-lister screen starlet in Hollywood. Been out dinner a few times. That's about it. In 2008, at the top of the bubble, she called me. I have no idea how she got my number. And I was shocked that she would, get my mobile number of all things and call me. And she asked me for help on how to invest in a particular stock, which was going with an IPO, which is a name you can probably figure out. But I remember reaching home that day and telling them, I think some sort of top has been made. When a Bollywood star calls me, that is about asking a question on the market, that seems like a top being made. And actually, that was quite prophetic.
Oh yeah, that time 2008 GFC happened.
Almost exactly at the top of one of the peakiest IPOs at that time. I was called to know how to subscribe to that IPO, and I remember telling her that don't do it.
So did she end up investing?
Who knows? I don't think she ever called me again. But.
Got it. And how do you react when people in your circle or any relatives ask you about stock tips? I'm sure a lot of people would come to you and what is working? What is the stock tip? How do you react?
Well, the thing I realized is that when your wife comes and asks you for a stock tip, that's when you know you're probably in the public eye, because the wife doesn't really care, but the wife's ready to say, Jia ji kya bol rahe hain? Humko pata nahi." So why are you asking for Jia ji? Suddenly the wife realizes that, Jia ji is influence in the stock market. It's fine. See, most people are very respectful when they ask me, and I'm happy to share my information with them. It's just, I have to tell them that I'll also get things wrong, So it's very hard because, you're looking at a point in time and you want to make money. And I don't really have trading ideas. I have things that work out sometimes in 2 years, 3 years. Sometimes they don't work out altogether. So to explain to them is a bit harder. But I have a very engaging bunch of relatives on both sides of the family, my side and my wife's side. Occasionally will ask me for what to do. My mother's side is entirely in Calcutta, and they're very hooked to the stock market. So for them, I'm the big brother made good type. So, but they're in touch with me regularly. They ask me information all the time. But it's generally, to be honest, it's generally been a very nice interaction. I think people are very respectful. I tell them politely as possible that I can get it wrong. Make sure that you understand what you're doing, And we are long-term investors. We're buying things for 2-3 years. And even in that, sometimes we'll get occasionally things wrong. So if you're ready for that, I'm happy to help you.
Yeah. Super interesting conversation. Had a lot of fun. Learned a lot myself. One last question I ask all my guests. It's a tricky one. If you were in the shoes of Kushal and if you were interviewing Mr. Ramesh Damani, what is one question you'd like to ask him towards the end?
If I was Kushal, what should I ask Ramesh Damani? I think it's important to understand what makes a man tick. What is the thing that makes him tick out there? And I think I became from a fairly timid, introvertish person to extrovert. And my people in school who went to school can't believe that I'm in the public eye I speak, because I never was spoken in school. Suddenly I have this best profile of my entire class, probably in school. And I think it's just about finding your voice and being lucky by finding some good friends. And like I've said, I've been blessed in both these matters. And the idea that I think I keep exploring in different podcasts is that I keep saying I regret I'm not a billionaire. And I don't mean that in terms, I'm well-to-do, I'm fine. But you measure your worth in the stock market by the money you make. It's as simple as that. If you, in the film, you said, did he win an Academy Award? If you're a math, did he win the Fields Prize? But in the stock market, you have to measure your money, And I think it's good. It's a good way you do that. And it is, and clearly the opportunity was there for me, Kushal. So, I feel bad that I could not take advantage of that opportunity. But I do hope that through this podcast and through the interviews I've done and through things else, that it will inspire another younger generation, to take, perhaps learn from your mistakes and realize that the opportunity ahead is great. So you don't have to be timid and introvert all the way, that you can find your voice and, be someone that you choose to be. And I think at the end of the day, whether it was Rakesh or Ramdev or anyone else, we all feel we are blessed beyond our means, and we all feel that we should be trustees of our wealth, that we should make sure that the wealth is ultimately put to good use.
Oh, wow. That is so, so touching. Thank you so much, sir, once again for doing this. I must say towards the end, you've been like the most humble and the most grounded guest I've interviewed in my entire podcasting career. The reason I say that is also because of the fact that this is my 225th podcast in the last 3 years. You were the first guest who has called me Kushal Ji, and there is not a single guest who has addressed me like that. So that means a lot. And really, I had amazing time shooting this with you. Thank you so much once again for doing this.
Like I always say, it's a pleasure and a privilege to use public airways to talk about your personal life. And thank you so much for asking me, and good luck and keep doing what you're doing.
Yes, thank you very much. It's a lot.
Nice. How did you get that done? You just got a computer program.
Yeah, there's a shop in Village Park. We send you a photo. अगर आपको ये वीडियो पसंद आया होगा तो आई रिक्वेस्ट यू टू शेयर इट विद ऑल योर फ्रेंड्स एंड सब्सक्राइब टू आवर चैनल सो दैट वी कैन गिव यू मोर वैल्यू एडिटिव कंटेंट इन द शॉर्टेस्ट अमाउंट ऑफ टाइम। हमको ये बताइए कि आपको कौन से काइंड ऑफ गेस्ट चाहिए, हमको ये बताइए कि कौन से क्वेश्चंस मुझे नहीं पूछने चाहिए थे, कौन से क्वेश्चंस मुझे और पूछने चाहिए थे ताकि आपको और ज्यादा वैल्यू मिल सके, और कौन से ऐसे पार्ट्स है जो आपको बिल्कुल पसंद नहीं आए ताकि हम लोग ये पार्ट स्ट्रीम कर सके फ्यूचर एपिसोड्स में। सो थैंक यू सो मच वंस अगेन फॉर वॉचिंग दिस एपिसोड एंड कीप शेयरिंग ऑल आवर एपिसोड्स विद योर फ्रेंड्स एंड कीप गिविंग अस फीडबैक so that we can improve and come up with better quality content.